Fire Emblem Thracia 776 is an exercise in moral futility. No matter how virtuous, humble, or honest your intentions entering this game, it will reveal to you exactly what you are by the time the credits roll. Actually, I have no way of knowing if it will manage to do any of those things I just said. All I know is it showed me my own moral hypocrisy in a manner very few games have managed to breach. All that while being the single most miserable, vicious, exhausting game I've ever had to pull myself through. I am very sorry in advance. Let's get one thing out early, so I don't have to address the Thracian side of the Fire Emblem fanbase for the rest of this video. Whatever amount of them even see this video to begin with. I hated playing this game. That being said, it's me who didn't enjoy this game. There's a very good chance whomsoever sees this may pick up Thracia 776 and have the absolute time of their lives. All the power to you. However, I'm not gonna lie to myself just to pretend it wasn't the least amount of fun I've ever had playing a game. To start with, there's no fanfare, we're getting straight to it. This is the follow-up to Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War. It takes place roughly around the same time as Selip's liberation of Jugthral, starting perhaps a couple months sooner, depending on how much time you believe passed between Selip's liberation of Izak and Connaught. Little lordling Leif must gather an army to take back his kingdom from the clutches of Raedric, a pathetic and cowardly lord helping the Loptarian bishops in their child hunts. Comparatively to Sigurd's stoicism and Selip's raw courage and faith, Leif is perhaps the best characterized lord yet. At every turn, his faith in himself is questioned and brutally challenged. This is one of the game's best aspects. Thracia 776 does not pull its punches. Leif has to lead and navigate his troops through some harrowing battles. When he starts to falter and doubt himself, you'll believe it. I doubt myself too if I had to navigate Pern's hideout. That being said, the story's biggest issue is I already know what's going to happen. This is also not really the game's fault. Almost everything after Chapter 17 is an expansion on minor events and descriptions between Chapters 7 and 8, namely, Leif's retaking of Castle Leonster, Ced's revolution across northern Thracia, as well as why he was in charge of Castle Munster. In spite of that, the first 17 chapters are all about Leif and his gradual growth into the lord we see in Genealogy of the Holy War. It's a little sad to watch Leif's mentality as he goes through the game. Yes, eventually he does find that little courage needed to push forward, but for a lot of the early to mid-game, Leif is in pain, and it's not hard to tell. His parents died off in the Aid Desert years ago. His grandfather died protecting Castle Leonster. His foster mother gets turned to stone. People he grew up playing tag with now willingly put their lives on the line to protect and support him. While I do enjoy the direction Leif's story takes, I feel like it has some issues in execution. For lack of better words, Leif is a bit pathetic. In no part is he unjustified in his fear and doubt, but he voices it so often it starts to feel almost comedic. Even up to the end of the game, talking with pivotal characters during these same events of genealogy, he speaks like he's afraid it's all going to come apart any second. This to me felt different from the Leif I saw in Fire Emblem 4. Despite us getting to see the literal events that set his life in motion, Leif in Fire Emblem 4 is a lot calmer and stabler, despite the events here happening at the same time. There also isn't any, per se, it factor villain to the story. The main struggle feels rather anticlimactic by the end, since the final villain is, head intern at Manfroy's cult. Veld is so cookie-cutter cultist, he could change hands between any cultist in this game, and even the previous ones. Hell, if I put a random cultist from Fire Emblem 8 here, would you notice? No matter how you stage it, presentation makes villains stand out in great ways. Medius is a unique dragon in both his appearances, larger than life. Even if he isn't as interesting as Harden, he is the root of the game's evil. You really can't get disappointed to fight a giant dark dragon. Raedric is a cowardly baron, and while there is some fun to be had with a character like this, he isn't in the game nearly enough to justify that feeling, especially since he isn't even the only cowardly baron in the game. If Raedric isn't fun to defeat and Veld is boring to kill, then what is there to interest you? It's amazing how just having, say, 2 to 4 more appearances would have made Raedric so much more fun to chase down and kill, and Veld any appearance at all. I would have loved if, with each successful advance from the Rebellion army, Veld visits Raedric and screams his ear off for messing up, mainly since Manfroy is breathing down his neck in anger for the exact same reason. Going back to the story, it being focused on Leaf's succession leads to a different issue. Almost half of the cast is just stat screens. We get a fun one every once in a while, but I dare you to tell me one interesting thing about Hicks. It's not just him either. A good 60% of the cast is a portrait, stat screen, and a single line of dialogue. This is a problem now since we've crossed the threshold of characterization. Genealogy managed to do it with romance dialogue and special events. Luckily, this complaint is going to stop from Fire Emblem 6 onwards. That said, much like in Fire Emblem 1 and 2, you get resourceful with what you do get. It helps that a few who have anything worth stand out so much more, like Homer. Potential first bisexual in Fire Emblem history. Potential, since you have to stretch some translations to reach that conclusion, but I'll take what I can get. Thank you very much. Or Maretta, maybe the most characterized unit outside of Leaf, as she goes through her own mini arc. It's one chapter, but come on, to overcome her shadow sword and be a better fighter. More shall be seen later. As for now, you may ask, where's the moral hypocrisy I spoke of? I'm getting to it, let me finish doing the setup. Hard. I call genealogy hard, and this shit is harder. So much harder. I am personally opposed to any level that has reinforcements that last more than 5 turns. This game is nothing but 20 turns of reinforcements. That said, this is also Fire Emblem firing on all cylinders. Your battle is not with inflated stats or walls of troops. Your battle is with positioning, strategy, frontline and support synergy. I may not like it, but this is some of the most well-tuned missions I've ever seen out of a Fire Emblem game. It does get excessive, a lot of the times, especially between missions 13 and 20, but you will almost never see these kind of missions again in the franchise. Some missions are set like fortresses you must penetrate. You do this in a couple ways. Use dodge and terrain to approach and eliminate the enemy backline. Rush frontline to eliminate the nearest threats, leaving backline exposed and using healers to compensate for any injuries. Or just set up tank units to eat hits and drain the enemy of their backline firepower altogether. And that's just some of the plays you could do. Warp skipping has never been better, especially with how many you can get your hands on. Clerics and bishops haven't been this viable since Gaiden. And also luckily nowhere near as much viable as Gaiden. Indoor missions still don't allow mounted units to stay mounted, so unfortunately Finn has in fact been nerfed. This sadly also applies to all mounted units, especially flyers. With the rivers of ballistas littering the game, Pegasus Knights and Draco Knights struggle in a lot of ways to make reliable approaches. I use them primarily in hit and run tactics alongside poking ballistas from their max range. One of the more questionable gimmicks in this game is fatigue. Fatigue is a unit's use limit. The more actions they perform, the more fatigue they build up. Once the fatigue number exceeds the unit's health, they cannot be used for a single whole mission. This especially affects priests and bishops since not only are their health growths low, but staves build fatigue really fast, especially utility staves like Silence and Warp. You can get a decent amount of stamina drinks through the game. These will let any fatigued unit enter battle, regardless of how much fatigue they've built. Fatigue is in a strange place. On one end, it makes you diversify your army and balances powerful units by forcing essentially a cooldown period unless you're willing to spend a valuable resource. On the other end, it's really annoying not being able to use a unit you spent a good couple levels building up. No matter how you slice it, it's always terrible not being able to use the things you have. Although, with how many units you can bring into most late game missions and how many semi-reliable units you're given, it's a mild sting at best. This leads to perhaps the gimmick to end all Fire Emblem gimmicks. Capture is an unassuming variant of rescue that should slot easily into the series, right? Right? Nay, capture is responsible for turning this simple conflict into pure horror. For the uninitiated, capture lets you capture enemy units. These scripts take half a month to write, can you tell? Capturing a unit lets you loot them of their weapons and goods. Once you've emptied their pockets, you can release them at your leisure. Some units can be recruited through this, and a Gaiden mission is even hidden behind this mechanic. Capturing, however, forces you to battle at a deficit. Capture reduces your damage, accuracy, and speed by a considerable amount, meaning even using it on weakened units isn't free by any chance. It's a good risk-reward mechanic, and actually one worth bringing back in some shape or form. Actually, no, don't do that. Don't bring this mechanic back. This whiplash and mindset is hurting my head. Have you ever pondered on the worth of the human soul? Starting Thracia and being told you no longer have to kill everyone you fight. It's like standing on a table in a classroom. All of a sudden, you see a different path altogether. Oh, to be cursed with options. I'm aware that this conversation is tutorial text to inform you on the mechanic, but it also presented an opportunity. What if I just don't kill? I spoke of wanting some level of pacifist option in the series, like being able to talk down a leader. Capture feels purpose built for this exact desire. If victory through a mountain of corpses isn't the path you want, then victory through a mountain of injured bodies will just have to do. Initially it's rough, but it's manageable. Occasionally you will crit kill an opponent or enemy phase will lead to an unfortunate situation. But those aren't your fault now, are they? You have units to protect as well. Jeopardizing their safety for the opponent is just wrong. As the game goes on, capturing everyone stops being possible without casualties. Constant reinforcements, strong boss opponents you're meant to flee from, fatigue forcing you to use weaker troops, putting them in constant risk. Also real fatigue, which you will slowly start to experience since the mid-game saps away at your willpower. But we can't relent on this. Life is sacred. To kill the bulk of the enemy army just feels wrong now, especially since you know the alternative exists. Maybe if you just spend a little more time preparing, just a couple more turns, things don't have to get out of hand. Regardless of when, you will encounter that level. That level will stop this naive and optimistic perspective in its tracks. For me, that was Chapter 6. There were rough strides prior as well, but this mission broke the pacifist thought process entirely. Yeah, it's funny, it only lasted 6 missions. By this point, any attempt to avoid death only led to more death, either my own troops or the opponent's. At a certain point, enemy phase just meant 5 or 8 fresh corpses. Dramatic as it sounds, I genuinely got distraught over this. Regrettably, however, I didn't learn my lesson. I just shifted the goalpost. Clearly, being completely pacifist isn't going to work, especially since there are certain troops that cannot be captured at all. Mounted units without sleep tools or mounted units on thrones, just mounted units in general or units that have capture immunity. So why not selective pacifism? If everyone can't be saved, why not just save unless really inconvenient? Good moral compartmentalizing on my end. For like 5 more missions. By the time you reach Pern's hideout or Tara, those really inconvenient become just completely inconvenient. Alright, more compartmentalizing. We'll capture select units that don't result in our troops getting rolled. Try to avoid reinforcements and backup. Warp skip, just skip stuff in general. Anything possible. Wait a minute. Our troops are really running out of weapons and tools. In the process of skipping and holding out, we have a lot of really outdated weaponry. Like by chapter 15 onwards, we should have great lances and killing edges in droves. Instead, I've been rotating this one Paragon sword between 3 units. And what's this? Some units just have really good weapons stockpiled on them, while others carry trash? Well, then skip the trash and spare the Velti. Boss units carry even better weapons, definitely spare those. Multiple times even. By a certain point in Thracia, I am doing exactly what I feared. I am playing like a leader should, working out the most profitable and least perilous path, which conveniently involved a mountain of corpses. We learned today the exact worth of the human soul. Whatever happens to be in their pockets, late game backup holding steel weapons, sucks to be you. Just fodder for Shiva to cleave through. Next time try being wealthy. That's all the end game is. Next time try being wealthy. Holding a physics staff? Welcome to the Survivors Club. Just a heal? Dead. I wasn't a pacifist at all. I just made an exclusive club of not dead people. And that's why I don't want capture to ever come back. Never give me this choice again. I don't want to relive this. If I'm gonna be a killer, at least make it consistent and don't give me the choice. So that was a mess and a half. If that doesn't represent at all how Thracia went for you, it's totally fine. My mistake was fixating too much on capture to begin with. However, that's not the end of matters that bother me. This leads into complaints altogether. Escape codes. On concept, I like these. It helps add just a little bit more to each character's personality. It also just becomes annoying after the halfway point in the game, since each character only has one escape code and does not change regardless of the events of the game. I can only hear Dalson cheer himself up so many times. Scrolls. Yes, I am complaining about scrolls, perhaps the best RNG controlling tool in the series. Scrolls provide growth boosts, much like orbs did in Mystery of the Emblem. However, just like orbs, in an effect to curb randomness, you also curb character individuality. Look at my endgame Shiva. Yeah, that's ridiculously powerful. That's what drugs did to this man. You think he could get this far with his normal growth distribution? Nah, he needs performance enhancers. At this point, this isn't Shiva. It's guy who wins the game for me. Or Guvdgufump. That said, it is completely a nitpick. I get why it exists, and I can't deny there's some joy in getting boosted growths. Sometimes I just open the character growth screen and stare at those inflated numbers. Gudgufum may not be authentic, but you can't sneeze at those results. Accuracy. Accuracy will never not be an uphill battle in Fire Emblem, but for the first time ever, it is completely impassable. It is physically impossible to cross 99% accuracy, and as the sage wisdom passes, if it's not 100% accurate, it's 50%. Luckily, the occurrence of a 99% miss is far and few between. That said, enjoy trying to capture with 70% accuracy. And truth be told, that's really all I've got to complain about. All the major stuff I've already said, and I'll get to my grievances with some characters later. Now let's talk about some good things in this game. Nothing. I lied. We're going right back to complaints. Fog. Why is it completely black? This shit was so bad it got corrected immediately in the next one. I understand trying to make mechanics around visibility forces the player to be cautious both in the mission and in prep, but you can't even see the small lit section your characters will be in. You really have no information going into these, and that's why there isn't a single good one. Every guided mission in this game brings out the deepest and most frustrated sigh from me. Speaking of which, why, Kaga? Why must you do this to me? I can handle endless reinforcements. I can handle spending dozens of turns just slogging through a map. But robbery? From me? You place vital and powerful items all over the map, then fill it with thieves? Thieves who also rob your units. Don't fight back and run away the moment they steal something. Not just that, there are dancers everywhere, meaning thieves rob and flee faster. If that wasn't bad enough, Tina is a priest in the boss room who keeps casting a unique thief staff? And all of this shit was rolled up in fog? This was my wall. Once I found it, there was no mission more painful to cross. And also, all my sanity was drained. To hell with this hideout, and to hell with Pern. Child trafficking ass charlatan. Ilios. Ilios is a commander in the Empire's Leonster branch. He chooses to defect to the rebellion since he desires to prove commoners can rise above the position of the peasantry. Far as characters in this go, he is the upper middle bracket. Then why is it that out of the entire cast, he alone gets singled out with a terrible ending? Linoan becomes a bachelor. Big sad. Galzus leaves his family again. Bigger sad. Ilios fails at successfully managing work and gets his dreams crushed, getting stuck in a low rank position for the rest of his days. The hell? You're telling me bags of chalk like Ossian and Halvan have become reputable members of their community and Ilios gets this? Freaking Pern walks away clean? You can argue Ilios is a little vain, wanting a higher ranking position for himself, but why just him? I don't even like Ilios that much, but now I just want justice for him. What this game doesn't think a commoner was worthy of a decent leader? To hell with you, Thracia. Ilios deserves better. And that's where the general complaints stop. I could go on, but there's genuine praise worth giving as well, which is going to be in this section. Defense missions. There's not many, but I am glad to see them. Defense missions have always been a thing I've enjoyed, and we'll see quite some good ones as the series continues, but for its first entry, it was good. For every 4 fog missions, there is one good defense mission. Shannon. Such a small inclusion, he's not worth having in the character section, especially since I didn't even recruit him. Ignoring his potential interests. He's a guy who happens to look and maybe even sound like Shannon. Genuinely, I thought this was Shannon for a minute. I thought he wasn't a leader yet and was trying to leave Tahara before things got sour since he's a coward or something. Thankfully, that's not the path Shannon's character is headed in. Shannon is just a joke character. He isn't a good unit at all. He has a silver card, which is kinda good, but for the most part, he's not worth going through the B route in its horrible trees. And yet, he is a simple but sweet addition to the game. His chat with Maretta is also really funny. Initially, since I thought the whole bit of Astra being unique to Isaacian royalty was a joke since Maretta just randomly discovered it. But then later I remembered Maretta is Isaacian royalty. So it checked out and Shannon just got lucky. Technically, he isn't the first impersonator in the series. Samto in Mystery of the Emblem did it before him. However, that guy wasn't either funny or interesting. Chapter 16a. My favorite mission. Not because it's hard or easy for that matter. In fact, this mission took the most turns to finish. Not because it was hard, no. This mission is to be properly exploited. Fellow rats who may or may not be watching, this is the gold mine. Makes me want to pop a champagne bottle even though I don't drink alcohol. For the uninformed, this mission gives you units holding the sleep sword, the easiest way to shut down mounted unit. Add on the Great Lances, Conomer and his Master Sword, all those silver and higher end tools, Colosseum, 19 con boss, capture everyone and sell. I feel filthy rich. Battle Axes. An entire divot just for battle axes. Even though they will appear in other titles, this is my favorite title for them, since they finally appear early enough to get their money's worth. Helps that finally, axes are in business, and business is good. Characters like Ossian carry this category of weapon and unit on their back, crit after crit after crit. Rewarp staves. Potentially the most anime thing in this franchise so far. Powerful mages just teleporting all over the map causing mayhem. Even just one of these elevates your army's power and movement immensely. I paired this with Zed in the endgame for amazing results. Honestly, such a good tool, it deserves to make a comeback. Huh. I guess that's it. Moving on to characters. Remember how I mentioned characters lacking much to talk about? We're just skipping all the okay ones. Leaf. I've already said mostly everything there is to be said about Leaf. Far as lords go, he is the most well-made so far, having the most active story involvement that didn't just amount to, I'll avenge my father, or die evildoer. In gameplay, he is a solid unit. He falls off a little around the mid-game, however has a really good promotion that helps him stay relevant all the way. Ossian. Far as expectations went, Ossian sounded like prime fodder material. Being a chord to his very own board didn't help either. But to my shock, he may have been the backbone of this entire army. If his unique axe didn't help him get a stable footing, his fantastic head-to-head prowess definitely did. His high health, strength and speed meant from start to the endgame he was taking fights and winning them. He only really fell behind in the literal end, but by then he'd done his share of carrying. I am a little confused why he promotes into a hero as opposed to say a berserker, which gives his hot-headed nature, you would think he would be a berserker. Finn. Finn may not be as powerful as he was in Genealogy, but he is still standing on business. His early game is good, his mid game is fantastic, but sadly, by the end he just gets outclassed, since a lot of the toughest missions are all indoors, meaning he can't get the most out of his excellent spears. He also gets far more characterization, being Leaf's surrogate father. There is this entire point about how after Quan and Ethelyn died, he fell into this silent depression, something that, based on how the ending slides of Thracia 776 go, they might not have ever ended. It's strange how he goes from the most loyal soldier ever to a vengeful one instead, leaving once the work is finally done. But honestly, I think it's a capable enough change, one that I think was fitting enough, even if I prefer Finn more from Genealogy. Ronan, Safi, Linoan, Karen, Asbel, Dean. This is the aggressively okay club. Some more useful than others, but none that can occupy more than 2 sentences of descriptions. The only reason they got listed here at all is because I'd feel bad if I didn't. Ronan was good, then he wasn't. Safi was bad, then she wasn't. Linoan wasn't worth it, and still isn't. Karen set up from the start, since mounts are only useful half the time, much less 1 week to ballistas. Asbel, I hate you. 50% crit my ass. And Dean, wish you were still with us. Lara. Karian. Karian never has enough damage to get by, so wouldn't it be funny if he just crit? This man is on par with Ossian with just how many times he turned a fight around by just going crit dead. Bulky, powerful, mostly fast enough, great availability, receives a Paragon Sword. He's just good. He's just good in every angle. I'd make a joke about him leaving a field of Carrion behind him. That's stupid. Maretta. Has the most protagonist energy aside from Leaf. Maretta never stops winning. From her first kill to her last, dominated in every single fight. Scroll abuse let her get nonsense growth since her bases are high enough as it is. She also has a whole thing about her own sword possessing her, supposed shadow sword that can take over her mind, but this gets resolved literally the second she is recruited. Shiva. I mean, look at those numbers. Scroll abuse is crazy. Shiva is the strongest unit, at least he was for me. Pair that with the soul manual and he can self-sustain fight anything, beginning to end game, the strongest unit bar none. And just like any other Navarre, he's a silent, say-nothing, good-looking face who disappears the moment the game ends. Homer. A great healer and fighter, comes with Paragon, beautiful design, potentially bisexual, is the complete package of a unit. Dalson. Filling in as the Gordon of this game, at least for me, potential best father, Dalson is everything I enjoy about Fire Emblem. He is a tank, a really slow tank. Did I say slow? I lied. With scrolls, he's a tank with wings. He may not be useful for about 70% of the game, but I just don't care. He's one of few units that can wield spears indoors, and that makes him a mainstay for me. I've always had an affinity with armored units. I'd always rather tank than dodge. Similarly, I've always liked archers too. Dalson is an armored archer. What more could I ask for? Galzus. He shows up 5 seconds before the game ends and just places himself into the overpowered units box. Makes sense, I guess. Galzus is like a safety pin. He is going to carry whatever part of your army isn't working. I like that he does return to Maretta. I also hate the whole I won't change my lifestyle for my actual daughter. Just like, to hell with you. Fire Emblem is allergic to normal parents. Said. He was the best in genealogy, and somehow he's even better in Thracia 776. With a rewarp staff, he's a teleporting bomb that can enter deep into enemy lines, kill everyone, and get out easily. He seriously carried the endgame on his back. Out of all the protagonists and important characters, I consider Sed the best and most important one. Thus ends the Jugdral duology. Admittedly, there was more I realized I liked about Thracia than I even wanted to believe. When I sat down to write this, I was livid. But upon inspection, I don't really regret having experienced this. Although given what I did experience, I understand why each subsequent title will only get easier. I consider this game the wall of difficulty, as in I genuinely don't believe a Fire Emblem game can get harder than this without some innate difficulty setting cranked to insanity mode or whatever. As for the part I deliberated on the most, where does it go? Deadass, I was at the start of this going to place it firmly below Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, but I feel like this is unfair. While I don't hold age against Shadow Dragon, it is also so much slower, and Thracia managed to tell a lot more compelling a story in comparison. As for is it above Gaiden? Hard to say. Screw it. Above Gaiden, Thracia goes, but not above Mystery of the Emblem. I still preferred that one. Speaking of where to go, back to the silence I shall go. I shall return in the continent of Alib. Till then, thank you for watching this mess, and have a good one.